Okay, that's exciting. We'll have to see how good our drivers are in the year 2025. So we've heard this week about the promises and the risks of big data. We just heard about that, the promises on the highway. Yesterday in a panel discussion, we heard that some companies are reluctant to share their data with third parties due to security and privacy concerns. Well, we'd like to find out what options companies have when they want to make intelligent use of their data by sharing them with third parties, particularly in an environment where privacy gets top priority. What approaches have been tried so far, and have they worked? All right, well, to talk about this, we've assembled one of our biggest panels this week, and I'd like for you to give a round of applause. I'm going to call them out onto the stage now. If they would come out and join us, please. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hey,
Yeah.
good to
Hi.
take a seat wherever you'd like. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Mr. Kejser, hey, come on, take a seat.
Shift one? Shift one? Yeah.
You can sit right here, it's fine. I think this is the last chair, Mr. Kejser. You get to sit
in.
you get to sit in the hot seat.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let me just go through the list here, make sure everybody knows who everybody is. Next to me is Thomas Kejser, Chief Technology Officer with Fusion.io, correct?
Correct.
Next to him is Frank Theisen, the Vice President, BAO and Smarter Commerce at IBM here in Europe.
Yep.
Next to him is Eddy Willems or Willems?
Eddy Willems.
Willems, okay, Global Security Officer at G-Data Software. And next to him is Natalya, Kaspersky, CEO of Infowatch. And next to her is Dinko Eror, the Senior Director Global Services Lead at EMC Squared. Okay, I'm glad all of you could make it today. Let's go through here the round and ask each of you briefly to tell us what you do and the connection it has to big data. Dinko, we'll start with you.
Yes, of course. My name is Dinko Eror. I'm Managing Director for Global Services by EMC Germany. EMC is coming from the storage business. In the meantime, we believe the whole entire business will be a digital business. And we love digital informations. We try to store them, we try to move them, we try to virtualize them. And of course, because we are taking care about a lot of information, it's normal that we are also taking care about the big data. Let me start with a small private joke. As somebody asked me, what is a big data? I said, big data is as big as a small data.
Okay, good.
I'm Natalya Kaspersky, and I represent the Infowatch group. We're busy with protecting data. So we are thinking about everything what might be possible problems with the data, where it leaks, where it how it got lost, how it's missed, and so forth. So basically, the protection issue is another big thing in the big data.
Yeah, we're going to pick up on that a little bit later on too. Eddy.
Yes, I'm Eddy Willems from G-Data Software. And of course, we are a security vendor. So what we have in common with big data is, of course, securing that big data. So, and that goes even from the endpoint to, well, to in the clouds, to everywhere. Big data is also very valuable for everybody, so, and it has to be protected in the right way. We think already into the future, and we want to, of course, see what we can do to help everybody out with that.
Okay, Mr. Theisen.
Yeah, I'm Frank Theisen from IBM, and I'm responsible for all our smarter analytics and smarter commerce offerings in IBM, from the infrastructure up to the solution side. And really our promise is to look at an end-to-end solution for our customers and how it ties to big data. Big data is for sure a core part of that smart analytics solution capabilities. And I've been building up the big data business in Europe last year.
Okay.
Thomas Kejser from Fusion.io. We provide storage and software acceleration for a lot of big data companies. A lot of our technology sits inside of Facebook. My job as a CTO is to oversee the software stack part of our offering. And I come from a database industry, 15 years in databases, and now moved into a company that produces storage. So it's quite an interesting transition. But as I'm sure we'll touch on today, there's some interesting parallels there.
Okay. We wanted to do a straw poll with the audience, too, to start out here, to ask everyone just two things. Does everyone here, if you know exactly what big data is, raise your hand? Okay, so maybe 20%. Have you heard of big data before this week? If you have, raise your hand. Okay, so pretty good. What we have found this week in our panel discussions, our experts have been coming on to talk about big data, is that a lot of people ask what's the big deal about big data. And the reason they ask that is because they don't know what it is. I'd like to throw this out to all of you. Is that a surprise to you that a lot of people, even in the industry right now, still don't know exactly what we're talking about when we talk about big data?
I don't think that's surprising at all. It really depends on who you ask what the definition of big data is. There's been a lot of fuss around big data, and I think there's also what I call an order of magnitude error sometimes. Mm-hmm. Is it big data if you have a 10 terabyte data warehouse, or is it big data if you're managing 20,000 servers that behave as a single compute cluster with 10 petabytes of storage? These are two very different problems that you're trying to solve, and I think big data is being thrown around as anything that seems big, and to the point of, yeah, big data depends on how much money you want to spend on it.
Yeah, I mean, it is sometimes about money too, isn't it?
It is, but it's also about driving down the costs of the data. It's, we spend a lot of our time helping customers get more out of their data for less money.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Tyson, what do you say about the lack of knowledge about big data?
Yeah, so we see that as well, so that if you ask 10 experts, you get also 10 different opinions on what big data is. So let me try to make it a little bit more tangible in terms of what customers are doing. So Vestas is a great customer in Denmark. He's producing wind turbines. It's the #1 in the world on wind turbines, and they are using big data analytics really to look at how to position best such a wind turbine to get the best ROI. And ROI means not only the best and the most wind, so that can be very difficult and dangerous, so it's the most balanced wind, and it's also about maintenance and warranty prediction. So what is the kind of least cost warranty for this windmill coming together in a real ROI case? So, and they look at all the weather data from the last 12 years. They look at geoseismic data. They look at the different topologies. So that is unstructured data, that is structured data, that is semi-structured data from machines. So all that together, huge amount, more than a petabyte. And to do that analytics, where to position that wind turbines is really differentiating them in the market. And not only that they do those analytics, so that's a real big data problem. So they turn it into their standard business processes. So their sales team can go out with an iPad and, for example, show and talk to the customers where to position those things best. So really bringing big data into the standard business processes.
I read an article about this too. Vestas now says that they can go anywhere, use the analytics with big data, and just in a couple of minutes determine whether or not a certain location is good for a turbine. And they said before they had the access to big data, it took them, 18 months sometimes to determine if a location was good.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's a huge increase in performance ability, too, for the company.
Yeah, if you think about that, that can totally change your business model. If something takes 18 months or even 3 to 4 weeks, so how many kind of calculations you can do and then talk to your clients. So, and that is completely changing the way you can do business. And that's where big data can also change in certain business initiatives, the way customers are going forward doing their business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating. Eddy, you deal with security,
yes,
obviously, and yeah, talk to me then about security and big data when there's still this lack of knowledge about big data.
Yes, actually, and that's true. The problem as well is, of course, you see that a lot of people don't know exactly what big data is. Well, you have already several opinions, and there are a lot of definitions, which is actually part of the real problem as well. If you ask, for instance, how we deal with big data as a security vendor, it could be even has a complete other kind of definition, because we are already using big data a lot. You know, we are sharing our samples, the virus samples, the malware samples, the URL links, with all in the whole security industry. And that for us is also big data. Because if you look at that kind of big data we already have and we still share with the whole industry, which is quite interesting to see, because that's not in every industry possible, seems to be at this moment. This is our part, what we do. This is also our start with our big data and how we try to optimize or try to use this big data for security optimization, actually. And that's also very important, because with the looking and indeed using the analytics we just discussed over here, we can actually optimize that security.
Okay. Do you agree with that, Natalya?
Well, basically yes, but till now I haven't heard any definition of the big data. So if you allow me, I would like to dare to make some. So in my opinion, the big data is some information which can be extracted from the volume of data and can give any trends or analytics which cannot be received by the small amounts of data. So in other words, it's something what we can receive when we see big picture and which we cannot define on a small amount of data. And the example which Eddy gave, many antivirus vendors are using the system which analyzes viruses in certain locations. And if you, for example, have one or two viruses in, or just have a little information about viruses, then you wouldn't know on is it a virus outbreak or is it what. And if we have or the rise our look and look from the big picture, then we can see then, for example, this place is occupied with a number of infections. So obviously, this is an outbreak which is targeted to this potential, to this city or, I don't know, the place or something else. And so based on that, we can make a conclusion that this is a certain targeted attack. By looking at separated samples, we couldn't make this decision. So that's an example on how big data is different from the normal data, so to say.
Okay, Dinko, what about you?
Yeah, my partners shared already a lot of very smart things. Let me play a little bit with a few words. On the one side, we are talking about the big data. I will come back to this topic. On another side, we are using the term data scientist in the meantime, and big data analytics. And I would really like to divide a little bit the three of them and to get the common understanding of all of them. Okay. If you speak about the big data, you can have a technology view, process view, or business view. Business view on the big data would be to get more value from the data and information what you already have. The process view would be with the business intelligence. In the past, we also did a good job, but it was what's happened in the past. With the big data, you are changing the view. If this, what will happen? You are talking about the real time and the future. And from the technology perspective, I like to use the term what I see by IDC analysis. The big data is if you are not more able with the technology today, with the appropriate server and storage from the past to analyze the data. From this topic, big data is starting. That is about the big data, how I see it. Data scientist is something very new. What we need, that are the guys using mathematical and analytical skills to help to translate business needs into technology. Today, the most of us in the room are IT people. We don't understand really the business, and the business people doesn't have any clue about the IT. And we need the people to translate between the both organizations. And the business data analytics, BDA, is very simple. If you put the data scientists on the big data, that is big data analytics. That is my view on that. Do you agree?
I mean, I'm not the expert here, but it's something that is understandable. What about your colleagues here? Do you guys agree with what Dinko says? Does it make sense?
I think to a certain extent we have always done these things, but we're now capable of doing it at a much larger data set. And I think that's one of the key insights for big data, is that we are now capable to run analytics on enormous graph structures that we have never been able to compute before, simply because we didn't have the compute power, we didn't have the storage infrastructure, and honestly, we didn't actually have the algorithms to do it either. And big data is now opening up a new type of insight that simply wasn't possible before, because we were constrained by compute power.
What about being constrained by business models? We had a presentation earlier today telling us that the use of big data is hampered by the inflexibility of business models. Have you asked Mr. Theisen about that? You're obviously an example of a company that has embraced big data.
So for sure, it's one of the key complexities to integrate that kind of traditional world, the IT infrastructure, which is in the companies, with this new kind of more explorational world. And that is something which needs to be overcome. And from my perspective, technology is doing various steps there. So I think the first and most needed thing is looking at the business initiatives. So what could really drive your business forward or save costs in using that new kind of capabilities that we have? And then look also at the business process. How can you fast integrate this into your standard IT infrastructure? And I think you will see for many providers, which those kind of big data platforms, you will be able to do that. It's something where the CIOs especially look at as one of the issues, but I think we are already on a good way to get this done if you start from the business initiative. So that is, I think, the key decisive factor. You can spend a lot of money in really trying things out with big data, playing around, but really you have to tie it onto really the ROI cases, and then you will see that it's easier to integrate with the processes that you think at the beginning.
I want to say I fully agree, really. That is what is changing. The big data will change the life and how we are working and living, but the most change for us as IT people is that in the past we had a bottom-up approach. We set up the technology and say, hey, use it, starting in the old mainframe time. In the meantime, we have to step in from the business perspective, and then at the end of the chain is some technology and databases or software or whatever. I fully agree with you.
We heard earlier today that business models are inflexible when it comes to dealing with or to using big data sometimes. We also heard that there's a shortage of talent to read and use big data. Maybe I could get you guys to talk about that. You are an example of the talent that's out there. But Thomas, what do you guys see when you're trying to recruit new people?
So we're quite fortunate that we have good locations in the world. We have a very good brand in the market that allows us to attract talent very easily. We work with a huge part of the Linux community, which I think is another shift that we're seeing now. People are looking at these solutions, and if you're running these enormous server real estates, it no longer makes sense to pay for software. And you are actually, this is another thing that's changing with big data, the economics of the situation. If you run a very big data center that acts as a single compute, example Facebook, first of all, does it even make sense to upfront make a business decision about what data you want to keep or not, if it's so dirt cheap to keep it? Does it actually make sense to know what your ROI is if you can store a lot of this data for almost no money? That changes the problem around. You might not even know what insights you're going to get from your data until you start analyzing it. The other thing that changes the equation is, if you run a very large data center, you now have the opportunity to spend a significant amount of programming hours and gain a huge leverage out of that. Whereas if what you're running is a few thousand servers, programming hours are very hard to come by. So it really changes the dynamics of an IT-driven company when you go towards the big data. It changes the cost models, and it changes, frankly, the business decisions about opportunity becomes a really big factor now.
Natalya, did you want to say something?
Yeah, you know, I was thinking that it's pretty well described that it is possible to store any amounts of data without knowing what is inside. And there are definitely somebody who need to know what is inside. And some for example, when we're talking about social networks, there are now appearing services which allows to companies gather all those opinions around and understand what are people thinking about their brands or about their products, etc. And all of a sudden, without getting these expensive marketing agencies who are making the groups of unknown people who try to describe your products, you get the opinion straight from the consumers, which is incredible. First, it gives a new angle of understanding and gives a new level, and it gives you a possibility to quickly react. For example, if you see a very unhappy customer who just tried to use a banking service, for example, and was very unfortunate, or something happened with him, and he wrote in his Facebook that what happened to me, and then you have a chance to react directly to him, which never was possible before, simply because that now we have an access basically to all the people around the globe, which creates a new level of opportunities for global companies. I think it's pretty interesting, but the technology which is behind is very complicated, because we need to structure unstructured data. And then the next level, when it comes of a big data, that's this big data quite often is a messy data, is unstructured data, was lit somewhere, somehow, stored somewhere around the globe in clouds, and we cannot differentiate. And even within the companies, and we're working mostly with enterprise, within big companies, global companies, there is very little understanding of how to structure this data, what to do with this data, how we will differentiate what is, for example, confidential or non-confidential. Is a very simple example. Even that is very difficult to do. And if we go to the next level to differentiate what type of information I have to categorize the information, then people have a very weak understanding. So the next step will be for us to understand what is inside of this massive stored data, which is stored somewhere, somehow.
And we had this discussion yesterday, the reluctance of companies to share their big data, because they don't know what information they're giving away when they share. And the example that was given, something that was maybe tangible for everybody, was Facebook has all this data about its users. And let's say some marketing company asks to find out something about the demographics of its users, and Facebook shares that information. Well, that marketing company can then take that information, run it through new analytics, and all of a sudden has new information from it that they never paid for. So it's almost like big data is this huge amoeba, and you take a little bit off, and then it grows again. And the discussion yesterday was, how do you define what information is in your big data?
I think it also highlights that what is the IP that your company has when you run a big data system? Is the IP really your database? And should you not be giving that away? And Facebook is a very good example of this, because they have this open compute project. They're commoditizing everything around them, and they're making sure that everyone can contribute. Hadoop was given away by Facebook. They developed a very advanced product, and they gave it away, because that's not the IP. The IP is the data they have. And that changes also the business model around that. Would you even be interested in sharing that data? And as you say, very good point. Do you actually know what you're sharing if you do?
Yeah.
And if you look at the sharing side, so where you see that sharing and cloud on big data starts off, you see that very strongly at the social media and social collaboration side, because exactly that's the kind of the behavioral style who is already this kind of in sharing mode that is also already being used. So if you see big data usage on the cloud, then you see it in online gaming, you see it in social media and analytics, you see it with traffic apps in the US strong coming up, so on that side, and I think cloud can play a lot of positive things in that area of big data. So first of all, coming back a little bit on your skills topic, so cloud is an excellent possibility to overcome a first step on that skills in getting very easily to a to a big data cloud potential to come up and use it for your first analytics, which you otherwise would have to buy maybe hundreds of servers to put it on premise. So you can start easily with that, and you overcome a certain infrastructure capability skill level at the core infrastructure for big data. And then you have the potential also on the cloud to have a kind of, you have public cloud, private cloud, and you will see come up more this hybrid model where you can see what are you sharing in public and what is really the protected side on the private cloud side that you want to protect your IP, or you have from a regulation point of view, even not the ability to share it, even depending on the country. So we will see, we have more and more global companies who are dealing with different kind of countries and different level of regulations, what you can do with the data. So, and I think cloud is an aspect which can really help there on standardizing a model on the usage.
Any questions from the audience before we continue? Any? I can't see all the way back there. Is there someone there?
Yeah, in the front row.
In the front row, sure.
Like what we heard, that classifying or defining what's a big data, I would like to ask, is there a borderline or a real classification? What is we call small data, medium-sized data, and big data?
Yeah, who wants to?
Well, that's actually part of the problem, I think. It's, again, the definition. And, again, definitions are really part of all the problems. It's indeed sharing the data. It's also one of the problems, of course, we see. And also, it's not only sharing the data or restructuring the data or something like that, but it's also try to create frameworks which are actually we can couple all those data together, and which is not an easy task, you know, which is very difficult. And because if I compare, I always compare this, of course, with the security industry, because I think we're a very good example of doing that already. With all the let us say, information and analytical tools we are already using, we discovered a lot of threats, malware attacks, etc. And if you look at that, this is what we do. We share the data already. We share big data. And even we, as a special industry, have already several, we are coming up, we see the problems in try to even improve our possibilities together. However, we want to do that because we want to secure the world, actually. It's not only about selling product, it's about even securing the world and securing the data, of course. But then you need to have a framework. You have to have frameworks which are really coupled to each other, which can work with each other. And that's very, very difficult on a technical level. So that's something we see at this moment if we're looking into, well, our sharing of the big data.
Yeah. May I answer the question? Well, if we use the definition which I give, then the big data we can consider such amount which would be enough to receive some extra meaning which you cannot receive from the volume less than we have. I understand it's not the clear definition, because you cannot say, is it 100 of something, or is it 100 of thousand, or is it 100 of millions? But if we can receive certain meanings above of our knowledge, which we couldn't receive from the different separated facts, then I think we can already start to talk about the big data. If not, then it's a level which is not enough to speak about the big data.
Maybe I have a point on your classification, not on the volume of data, but on the 3 V's. That's maybe something which is easy also to remember. So it's volume, variety, and velocity. So if those things coming together, so you can handle with a standard relational database a petabyte of standard data. But if you add in lots of unstructured data, it gets very complex. So that does not mean that you have petabytes of unstructured data to be considered as big data. It's more about that three topologies, so the combination of unstructured, of structured data, and then the ability to react in real time. So if you want, for example, on network adapters to react on real time if you get IP traffic and do decisions in real time based on analytics. So then simply that was in some cases not possible before and 5 years ago. But that being able to do and then stream the data and do analytics is part of big data on the velocity side. So characterizing it more from those three V's is considered as big data, how we see it.
And the time is very important. If the data is changing very fast, then you have a big data. You can have a huge amount of data which is not changing, and you can take a time and analyze. But if the data is analyzing very fast, plus 3V, that is a big data.
Like weather data. Weather data is a good example of big data that people can understand quickly. Let's say we've decided we agree on what is big data. Can we agree on how to secure the big data? That's also an issue we've talked about this week. Companies that have big data being unwilling to share it with a third party. And maybe Eddy and Natalya can talk to us about this. How do you protect your big data, secure your big data, and offer security to a third party?
Yeah, I think we are, with Ville, we coming from different perspective. The antivirus companies try to secure infrastructure or to protect the data from external attacks. We are looking at the data from data itself. So we're trying to understand it from inside, to understand the meaning of the data, to extract those which might consider be as confidential on the different levels. We can have 3, 4, 5 levels depending on how the company wants it. And then to establish different politics on what to do with a certain level of confidentiality. For example, some information of the first level of confidentiality can be blocked, the other information can be relieved, but with a notification. The third level might be, well, whatever, stored and then thought over in the next round, and so forth. So all depends on the politics. But of course, it is much more difficult to really give guarantee. Of course, in the security, nobody loves to give guarantee, it's clear. But even with the data, it's even more difficult because it is very, very difficult to differentiate on the levels of the confidentiality, on the structure, on the verticals, on the people who are using it. For example, some information is allowed to some people, not allowed to the other people. And then we're speaking about different policies. So till the moment, I don't know the company which might solve the problem. And they're coming from the different perspectives. Some are coming from the security side, like we, for example, from data leakage, we are trying to establish a broader system which would generally protect the data. Some companies like IBM are coming from the point of thinking about that data in a global perspective and trying to come up with the solutions which generally protects the data. And then there is business intelligence system, which also try to implement some parts of the security. But in the reality, we don't know what will be working in the future. I hope that our approach will be the best, but of course, not yet.
We don't know yet. Yeah.
Not yet, yes, not yet.
Actually, yes, that's right. I completely agree with Natalya on that. And also, if you look to the several security vendors, they will all have their approach on it. Reaching from the endpoint, because that's where it starts from, you know. If you don't protect already there, you have already a problem. But that's maybe not the real problem in the future, because in the future, of course, and we already see this happening, there could be a problem related to mismanipulation of the data. And this is actually already happening.
Do you have examples of that, Eddy, that you can name where data is being...
Well, actually, of course, if you see, for instance, that it's quite easy. It's maybe not a real good example, but for instance, if you to attract people, even if you look to the Android platform, just completely something different, but still very important, I think, for everybody over here as well. If you want to attract people to install a malicious app, for instance, you can manipulate the data that everybody is going to install that data. How do you do that? By using, let's say, for instance, botnets or whatever, and then to use, actually, to have a lot of data going into the cloud, mismanipulating that it's actually at this moment, for instance, that you have a lot of, let us say, good, that you have you can say you have 5 stars for this app, 5 stars for this app. So actually that you approve that you got a lot of followers, a lot of people who actually seems to be downloading that app, and that you actually also see that you have very good quotations about that app. What are the normal people going to do? Or even you're going to install that app, of course. That's actually a very small example, of course, about mismanipulation of data. Because you're actually doing something, you mismanipulated. That's one example. A second example, of course, mismanipulation can be done, of course, inside the company. It's not, because that's something which is underestimated sometimes. We are maybe talking about attacks, about threats which are on the internet. But mismanipulation of the data can be done in the data centers by do you trust your people who are, accessing that data from the other side, which is a very important thing. We are all working for very, responsible companies and very knowledgeable companies, and we know who we are hiring. But actually, that could be also a threat from the inside.
From inside?
Yes, yeah. Actually, yes. And we are aware of it. I'm definitely sure
that's
about
something Thomas or Dinko could address. I mean, how do you, if you are offering all this storage space, I mean, how do you guarantee a business that it's safe, that there's not going to be, a spy inside?
So a lot of our customers do employ security on top of their data, but I think there's an interesting spin on this, which is that the understanding of security is in itself a big data problem. Because the velocity of, so consider, for example, a hospital that has patient records. You generally want to know who has seen those records. So even though you might have a relatively small data set of your patient records themselves, the log of who has seen them is much, much larger than the data itself. So, so we see some of our customers actually using the speed that we deliver to solve the velocity problem, and to use the amount of compute power that unlocks to actually make things more secure by analyzing the data that's being injected into the system. And I find that quite interesting, that big data itself is a security concern to some extent, but solving the security problem is in itself another big data problem.
So what does that mean? I mean, we had a question here on the Twitter wall about that too, about healthcare, hospital records. What does that mean then? This example you gave us, then can, let's say, a hospital or a healthcare system, can they give a guarantee then that a person's healthcare records are always private?
I think we've always had cybercrime of some way or another, and encryption has been a bit of an arms race. I'm sure that you can speak much better to that than I can. So yeah, we know that that data has always been compromised. Big data, this is not new. Again, the things that we have done with analytics are being scaled up by big data. The things we have with security are being scaled up with big data. But none of these things are new. This is not a problem that was introduced because big data and the cloud arrived. So just make the observation that this has always been a problem.
Okay.
Go ahead, I strongly believe, and our discussion is showing, that if you want to do a good and sure business, you have to have a big picture. And from IT perspective, if you want or not, the big picture is you have to do your homework and have a clear strategy on a cloud, big data, and security. You have to have the entire picture on that. I strongly believe, even the last IDC study shown us that only 90% of the digital information around the globe is protected. 81% of the information is not protected. That is making me scary. But the companies who has made their homework and analyzed what the Natalya said as who made to see which data at which point in the time is a starting point for everything. And you cannot do that only on the technology level. You have to go from the business and process perspective and to do really risk, governance, and compliance analysis about the whole game. And the next step is a big data sharing. And if you want to share the big data, that is a huge amount on positive things. But first of all, you have to see what you are sharing already today through Facebook or Twitter or whatever you are doing. The second thing is to see what is the value of my information for others, what I want to share, what I don't want to share. The second thing is what is my unique selling proposition, what I really don't want to share with anybody, and then to see how you want to share the data. We are always thinking about the Twitter and Facebook. We can share bilateral from A to B, or we can share from A to N, and only for a small portion of the data we can share to everybody. And what I want to make clear, there are in the meantime processes and technologies, and all these companies are having that and many others to solve all security problems if we want that and if we do our homework.
No, unfortunately not. Because if there were a solution, then the 80% of companies would use the solution. But unfortunately, the solution which exists, the technology solution, I can talk only about the technology solution, cannot guarantee you the safety of the data. When you implement all the possible existing solutions, that can only help you, so it can be a tool, but unfortunately, it also lead us to the categorization of the data, which is very difficult to make. And if you do the categorization wrong, that at the end you would receive an unclear result. And so your information in the end will be unprotected. And that's the problem. There is not enough technology which would automatically protect the data. So it is too much manual job, which nobody wants to take. That's why the data stays unprotected, and we're still discussing how to protect it, sitting here.
But Natalya, you are a government's nightmare when you say things like that, because the governments want to tell people that their information is protected, that there's a guarantee that that information is protected, and you're saying they can't give a guarantee.
No, of course there is no guarantee. We wouldn't see these terrible cases happen when we just spoke about patients' leakage, patients' data leakage. Right. It has happened last week in Germany, and then 10,000 patients' records were sent away by mistake. And it happens every week. We're following all the cases. For example, last year, it was over 900 cases when big data, mostly personal data, was leaked due to different reasons. Most of the reason is not even insiders who cautiously take it or using some kind of malware. It's stupid things like printed and forgotten the printer very often. Okay. Or left my laptop somewhere with this information which wasn't encrypted. Or
that's just
I took the information. It's careless, yes, it's something different. And then how you can prevent it. You see, the point is that unfortunately the problem, we're too far from solving the problems. Yes. That's why it's coming from the point of regulation. We're talking about regulation, right? Regulation must be. We're talking about processes, absolutely agree, because without processes we cannot do anything. We're talking about technology, and technology is still, well, is still far away from something that we need to receive, right?
Okay. Actually, it's the human which is the problem.
The human.
Yeah, the human is the problem. Actually, that's...
Yeah, but the humans are here to stay.
Yes, I know. And we are also improving, and we try to solve it. But even as a big industry, we even can't do that. And that's what you see these days, you know. A lot of companies have been hacked. A good thing is that nobody of us have been hacked yet. Touching wood. But anyway, you see, so this is also coming to the big data. It goes after that one. If you place something in the cloud, even if you're not placing it in the cloud and putting it on your own private service, it can also be hacked. And the real problem is the human, because we always can, we have some problems related to our mind, I think.
Well, we're running out of time, but I don't want to leave it on a negative note. I mean, maybe, Mr. Theisen, maybe I'll give you the last word here. There are good opportunities in big data as well as the risks we've been talking about.
So absolutely, I want to also end with some positive notes, and there's lots of opportunities. So for sure, we need more methodology, we need more security. But if you look at things like predictive maintenance is currently starting up big time, where you have automotive companies sharing with their suppliers data on how to really prevent that incidents happens up front. So really getting there a huge cost saving in place and customer satisfaction. And in general, you see that big data is helping to put stronger customer and consumer centricity in place, so that we can focus much, much stronger on the needs of the clients. And if we do it in a positive way, then I think big data will also transform our business in a much more positive way on what we are demanding as each single client.
Okay, Dinko, you get the last word.
Yes, of course. I always like good examples. Let me share the following examples. All of us will fly today or tomorrow home. And if our airplane companies and the airports share the data, then my airport in Frankfurt today evening will know that I'm coming. They know which newspapers I like. They will have enough security officers because a lot of people are coming. That is a sharing of the big data without big risk for all of us. I like it.
You like it, yeah. But you must always fly business if they know what newspapers you like. Also, Dinko, you get the award for being the first panelist this week to also have been a politician.
Yes, that's right.
You were a member of the Croatian parliament,
yes,
right?
I was that. For 4 years, it is a great experience. I would recommend everybody to go for a few years to politics. Not too long, but few years, it's a great experience, believe me.
We'll have to let you talk to Mr. Steinbrück, who talked with us yesterday. All right, thank you to all 5 of you. And let me just say to our audience, this is going to wrap up the action from the center stage today. Don't forget you can stop by the open stage and the power stage this afternoon. Tomorrow we're going to be back here for the final day of the global conferences. On the agenda tomorrow, the power of the crowd, and we talked a little bit about this today, recruiting the right employee, recruiting 2.0, finding the perfect worker. Join us for that tomorrow. Thanks for your attention. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Thank you.